The sun cast long shadows across Jefferson Park that afternoon, but darkness had already crept into 13-year-old Olivia Thompson's world. Her trembling fingers touched the cold glass pressed against her lips, tears streaming down her face as the bitter taste of beer filled her mouth. The police officer's cruel laughter echoed in her ears, his badge gleaming mockingly in the fading light. Just moments ago, this had been her sanctuary, the park, where her father, Chief Michael Thompson, kept everyone safe. Now, trapped in this nightmare, she desperately hoped her father would appear. She never imagined that this moment would unravel secrets buried deep within both their lives. Dear viewers, your support means the world to us. By subscribing to our channel, you're helping us continue sharing powerful stories of hope, love, and resilience like Emily and Thor's journey. Each subscription enables us to reach more people and spread awareness about animal welfare. Thank you for being part of our community. Olivia Thompson had always felt blessed to be the daughter of Jefferson City's chief of police. At 13, she carried herself with a quiet confidence that came from growing up under Michael Thompson's protective wing. Her father wasn't just any police chief, he was a man who had risen through the ranks on merit and integrity, earning respect not through fear but through his unwavering commitment to justice. In their modest two-story home just blocks from the station, photos lined the walls telling their story: Olivia's first day of school, her father in his graduation ceremony from the police academy, countless moments of them together at community events. But it was the picture of them at Jefferson Park's annual festival that held pride of place. Olivia perched on her father's shoulders, both beaming at the camera, her small hands gripping his police cap. Chief Thompson had raised Olivia alone since her mother's death 6 years ago. The loss had brought them closer, forging a bond that went beyond the typical father-daughter relationship. He'd learned to braid her dark hair before school, attended every parent-teacher conference, and somehow managed to never miss her violin recitals despite his demanding schedule. In return, Olivia had grown into a thoughtful young girl who understood the weight of her father's responsibility to the community. At school, Olivia excelled not just in academics but in bringing people together. Her teachers often remarked how she seemed to inherit her father's natural leadership abilities, mediating playground disputes and standing up for kids who couldn't defend themselves. She carried her father's badge number 2749 like a secret talisman, drawing strength from it whenever she faced challenges. But being the police chief's daughter also meant living under constant scrutiny. Olivia had learned early on that her actions reflected not just on herself but on her father as well. She navigated this pressure with remarkable grace, though sometimes she wondered what it would be like to just be another kid in Jefferson City. Still, the pride in her father's eyes whenever he introduced her as my daughter Olivia made it all worthwhile. What set Olivia apart wasn't just her connection to law enforcement, it was her innate sense of justice, cultivated through years of dinner table conversations about right and wrong, about power and responsibility. Chief Thompson had always taught her that wearing a badge meant serving others, not wielding power over them. It was a lesson she took to heart, never imagining how severely it would be tested in the days to come. Little did she know that the safe, ordered world she inhabited was about to shatter, revealing dark secrets that had been buried long before she was born. Jefferson Park had been more than just a green space in the heart of the city. It was where the Thompson family's story truly began. 20 years ago, Michael Thompson had been a rookie officer patrolling these very paths when he first met Sarah, Olivia's mother, painting watercolors by the old oak tree. The park had witnessed their first kiss, their wedding beneath the pavilion, and later their quiet walks with baby Olivia strapped to her father's chest. After Sarah's tragic passing in a car accident 6 years ago, the park became a sanctuary where father and daughter could feel her presence most strongly. The memorial bench bearing Sarah's name sat beneath her favorite magnolia tree, its brass plaque catching the sunlight just as her smile once did. Chief Thompson made sure the park remained a safe haven for everyone, implementing community policing programs and regular family events that brought the city together. Every Saturday, weather permitting, Olivia would walk these familiar paths, sometimes alone, sometimes with her father when his schedule allowed. She knew every corner of the park, the duck pond where she'd learned to feed birds without chasing them, the playground where she'd conquered her fear of heights on the monkey bars, and the small rose garden her mother had helped plant as part of a community initiative. The park held deeper significance for the police department as well. It was here that Chief Thompson had initiated his most successful community outreach programs, breaking down barriers between law enforcement and local residents. Monthly coffee with a cop meetings at the park's cafe had become a cherished tradition, and the summer youth program had dramatically reduced juvenile crime rates in surrounding neighborhoods. For Olivia, the park represented everything her father stood for: a place where everyone, regardless of their background, could feel safe and welcome. She often watched with pride as her father greeted regulars by name, remembered their children's birthdays, and took time to listen to their concerns. His officers followed his example, making the park a model for community-oriented policing across the state. Yet beneath this picture of civic harmony lay undercurrents of tension that few noticed. Some officers resented what they saw as Chief Thompson's soft approach to law enforcement. Others harbored personal grievances that festered beneath professional smiles. The park's peaceful facade masked long-standing departmental divisions that would soon erupt into the open. On this particular Saturday afternoon, as Olivia set out for her usual walk, the park seemed unchanged: families picnicking on the grass, elderly couples on benches, children racing their bikes along winding paths. But change was coming, as inevitable as the lengthening shadows that stretched across the carefully maintained lawns. The autumn sun painted Jefferson Park in shades of gold and amber that Saturday afternoon. Olivia Thompson adjusted her blue backpack, the one her father had given her on her 13th birthday just 2 months ago, as she made her way through the familiar iron gates. The air carried the crisp scent of fallen leaves mingled with the sweetness of late-blooming roses from her mother's garden. Today was special. Chief Thompson was personally overseeing the park's safety during the upcoming Harvest Festival preparations. Olivia had planned her visit carefully, hoping to surprise her father during his patrol. She'd packed his favorite turkey sandwich and the oatmeal cookies she'd baked that morning, carrying on her mother's tradition of bringing him lunch during long shifts. Groups of volunteers were scattered throughout the park, hanging paper lanterns and setting up wooden stalls for next week's festival. Olivia recognized Mrs. Anderson from the flower shop directing the decoration committee, and Mr. Chen from the local diner organizing the food vendor layout. Everyone seemed to be in high spirits, their cheerful conversations floating on the autumn breeze. Several police officers patrolled the grounds, nodding respectfully as they passed their chief's daughter. Officer Sarah Martinez, who had been Olivia's mother's best friend, stopped to compliment her new autumn sweater. "Your dad's over by the lake pavilion," she mentioned with a warm smile. "He'll be so happy to see you, sweetheart." As Olivia walked deeper into the park, she noticed subtle changes in the atmosphere. The crowds thinned out, and the festival preparations didn't extend to this quieter section. Here, the trees grew closer together, their branches creating dappled shadows on the path. A cool breeze rustled through the leaves, carrying distant echoes of children's laughter from the playground. She passed the memorial bench, touching its smooth wooden surface as she always did, whispering a soft "Hi, Mom" under her breath. The ritual brought its usual comfort, but today something felt different. The air seemed heavier, charged with an unfamiliar tension. Even the regular park-goers appeared more subdued, hurrying along rather than lingering to chat as they typically did. Near the lake, Olivia spotted an unfamiliar police cruiser parked at an odd angle across the path. She'd memorized most of the department's patrol schedules, her father's influence showing through, and knew this area was usually covered by Officer Martinez or Officer Reynolds. The sight of the unknown vehicle gave her pause, but she brushed off her unease. After all, this was her father's park, her sanctuary. A pair of joggers passed her, their faces tight with concern rather than the usual friendly smiles. Further ahead, a mother hurriedly gathered her children from the small playground despite their protests. Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, but she couldn't quite put her finger on what. The peaceful facade of the afternoon seemed to be cracking, revealing something darker underneath. Still, she pressed on, determined to surprise her father with lunch. The weight of the backpack felt reassuring against her shoulders, grounding her in the familiar, even as the world around her began to shift in subtle, unsettling ways. The first sign of trouble came in the form of heavy footsteps behind her. Olivia turned to see a tall officer she didn't recognize approaching with deliberate strides. His badge caught the afternoon light number 4891 and his nameplate read Connor. Though he wore the same uniform as her father, something about his presence made her instinctively step back. Officer James Connor carried himself differently from the other officers she knew. Where they projected protection and service, he radiated authority and intimidation. His clean-shaven face bore a hardness that seemed etched into his features, and his eyes a startling blue that reminded her of Arctic ice held none of the warmth she was accustomed to seeing in law enforcement. Well, he drawled, coming to a stop mere feet from her. What do we have here? Don't you know this section of the park is restricted today? His tone carried an edge that made her skin prickle, despite the mild autumn temperature. Olivia straightened her shoulders, channeling her father's diplomatic approach. I'm sorry, Officer Connor. I didn't see any signs. I'm just heading to meet my father, Chief Thompson. She expected the mention of her father's name to soften his demeanor, as it usually did with other officers. Instead, something dark flickered across Connor's face. His mouth twisted into what might have been a smile but held no warmth. Chief Thompson's daughter, he said, drawing out each word as if tasting them. How? Convenient, he took a step closer, and Olivia caught the faint scent of coffee and something sharper underneath. You Thompsons really think you own this place, don't you? His voice dropped lower, meant for her ears alone. Walking around like royalty, acting like the rules don't apply to you. Each word carried years of bottled bitterness. Confusion and fear mingled in Olivia's chest. This wasn't how officers behaved, especially not toward the chief's daughter. But more than that, Connor's animosity seemed deeply personal, as if he'd been waiting for this moment. I should go, Olivia said quietly, trying to step around him. Connor's hand shot out, not quite touching her, but blocking her path. The movement was smooth, practiced, like a predator herding its prey. Not so fast. Princess's badge gleamed as he leaned down, bringing his face level with hers. Your daddy might run this department, but out here, I'm in charge. The last words came out in a near whisper that chilled her more than any shout could have. Olivia's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd grown up around police officers, had been taught they were protectors, helpers, but nothing in her 13 years had prepared her for the naked hostility in Connor's eyes. Please, she managed, hating how small her voice sounded. I just want to find my dad. Connor's laugh was sharp and humorless. Oh, we'll make sure he finds us. But first he reached into his jacket pocket, the movement deliberately slow. First, you and I are going to have a little chat about respect. The sun disappeared behind a cloud, casting sudden shadows across the park. In that moment, Olivia realized with crystal clarity that she was alone with someone who bore not just a grudge against her father, but a deep-seated hatred that had found its target in her. The safe, familiar park had transformed into something alien and threatening, with Officer James Connor as its dark guardian. The backpack with her father's lunch suddenly felt like a lead weight, anchoring her to a spot she desperately wanted to flee, but something in Connor's stance told her running wasn't an option. Whatever was about to happen, she would have to face it head-on. Officer Connor's shadow fell across Olivia like a physical weight as he produced a silver flask from his jacket. The metal caught the light, momentarily blinding her. You know what this is, Princess? He asked, his voice dripping with mock sweetness. This is what real people drink, not the fancy drinks at your daddy's country club. Olivia's throat went dry. She'd seen the effects of alcohol before belligerent suspects her father's officers brought in angry voices from the holding cells. But this was different. This was calculated, methodical intimidation by someone wearing a badge. I need to go, she repeated, her voice stronger now despite her fear. She took a step backward, but Connor matched her movement, maintaining the suffocating proximity. The smell of stale coffee and hidden alcohol on his breath made her stomach turn. You entitled brats are all the same, he continued, unscrewing the flask with deliberate slowness. Think you're untouchable because of Daddy's position. Tell me, does he know you sneak around his park like you own it? His words carried a weight of personal resentment that seemed to go far beyond this moment. I don't sneak around, Olivia protested, feeling tears threatening to form. This is a public park. My mom helped. Your mom? Connor cut her off, his voice sharp as a blade. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes at the mention of her mother. Don't you dare talk about, he caught himself, but not before Olivia caught a glimpse of raw pain beneath his anger. The revelation hit her like a physical blow. This wasn't random harassment. Connor knew something about her family that made this personal. But before she could process this thought, he stepped even closer, forcing her back against a tree. "Time for a lesson in humility," he growled, raising the flask. "Drink." The command hung in the air between them, heavy with threat and malice. "No," Olivia whispered, then louder, finding her mother's courage. "No, you can't make me." Connor's face twisted into something ugly. "Can't make you," he laughed, the sound devoid of humor. "Sweetheart, I'm an officer of the law. I can do whatever I want." His free hand gripped her shoulder, pinning her against the rough bark. Olivia's mind raced. She'd been taught what to do in dangerous situations: scream, run, find help. But those lessons hadn't covered what to do when the danger wore a police uniform and carried her father's authority. "Someone will see," she managed, glancing desperately around the empty path. Where had all the park visitors gone? Why did this section feel so isolated from the festival preparations just minutes away? "Let them see," Connor snarled, his facade of control cracking to reveal the rage beneath. "Let them all see what happens when the mighty Chief Thompson can't protect his precious daughter." He pressed the flask against her lips, the metal cold and unyielding. The moment stretched like glass about to shatter. Olivia saw different versions of her future spinning out from this point: one where she submitted, another where she fought back, each carrying its own terrible consequences. But beneath her fear, something else was building: her father's sense of justice, her mother's quiet strength. She met Connor's ice blue eyes, seeing in them not just cruelty but pain, not just anger but hurt. This man wasn't just a corrupt officer, he was someone who had been wounded deeply and was determined to pass that wound along. The realization didn't make her less afraid, but it gave her something she desperately needed: understanding. The flask pressed harder against her lips, and Olivia made her choice. The flask clattered to the ground as Connor's patience snapped. In one fluid motion, he produced a beer bottle from his patrol car, its brown glass gleaming ominously. "You want to do this the hard way? Fine. Let's do it the hard way." His voice had lost all pretense of professionalism, raw with something that went beyond mere anger. "Please," Olivia whispered, but Connor was beyond listening. His grip tightened on her shoulder as he twisted the cap off with practiced ease. The sharp smell of beer filled the air, making her gag slightly. "Open your mouth," he commanded. When she kept her lips pressed firmly shut, his expression darkened. "I said open your mouth." The bottle pressed against her teeth, cold glass threatening to chip them. Tears streamed down Olivia's face as she struggled against his grip. The bottle forced its way past her lips, bitter liquid spilling down her chin. She choked and sputtered, the taste of beer mixing with the salt of her tears. "Not so special now, are you?" Connor taunted, his voice thick with satisfaction. "What would Daddy think?" Seeing his perfect little girl like this, he tilted the bottle higher, forcing more liquid into her mouth. Some part of her registered that his hand was shaking, that beneath his cruel exterior, something was fracturing. The sound of approaching footsteps made Connor pause briefly, but instead of releasing her, he pressed harder. "Drink it," he hissed. "Every last drop. Show everyone what kind of family you really are." Olivia's vision blurred with tears, but through them she caught a glimpse of something in Connor's eyes, not just hatred but pain so deep it had twisted into this moment of cruelty. The way he'd reacted to the mention of her mother, the personal nature of his vendetta, it all hinted at a story she didn't yet understand. Beer spilled down her shirt as she struggled, the once pristine uniform her father wore with such pride now being used to terrorize his own daughter. The irony wasn't lost on her, even through her fear. "Officer Connor," a sharp voice cut through the scene. Connor's head snapped up, but he didn't release his grip. Instead, he seemed to tighten it, as if determined to finish what he'd started. "One more sip, Princess," he whispered, his voice trembling with barely contained emotion. "One more sip to remember me by." The bottle pressed harder against her lips, and in that moment Olivia saw something that would haunt her forever: a flash of familiar blue eyes, the same shade as her own, reflecting in Connor's rage-filled gaze. The revelation hit her with stunning clarity just as the sound of running footsteps approached. James, the voice that bellowed across the park, was one Olivia had never heard her father use before, raw with authority and something else, something like recognition and horror combined. Connor's hand faltered, the bottle slipping slightly. In that moment of hesitation, Olivia saw not just a corrupt officer, but a broken man acting out a vendetta whose roots ran deeper than she could imagine. The beer bottle trembled against her lips, caught between Connor's determination to hurt her and some deeper conflict playing out behind his eyes. The next few seconds seemed to happen in slow motion, the bottle dropping, glass shattering on the path, Connor's grip loosening as he turned to face the approaching footsteps. And in his face, Olivia saw something that turned her fear into confusion, tears matching her own, rolling down his cheeks as he whispered, "I'm sorry, little sister." The shattered glass lay scattered across the pathway like fragments of the truth that was about to break open. Chief Michael Thompson stood frozen, his face a mask of anguish as he looked between his daughter and the man he'd kept secret for 25 years. James Connor had been born James Thompson, the product of Michael's first love during his rookie year on the force. His mother, Catherine, had disappeared when James was just 5, leaving behind only a note saying she couldn't handle being a police officer's wife. Michael, young and overwhelmed, had let his parents raise James while he buried himself in his work, climbing the ranks and eventually meeting Sarah, Olivia's mother. "You never told her about me, did you?" James's voice cracked with decades of suppressed pain. He'd taken his mother's maiden name when he joined the force, determined to make it on his own merit rather than his father's name. "All these years, watching you parade around with your perfect new family, your precious Olivia, while I was just the mistake you swept under the rug." Olivia stood trembling, her mind struggling to process this revelation. The beer on her clothes felt cold against her skin, but the truth felt colder. This man, this angry, broken officer who had just terrorized her, was her brother, her father's first child. The family secret that had been hiding in plain sight. James Chief Thompson stepped forward, his hand outstretched. "I wanted to tell you both so many times, but after Catherine left." "After my mother left," James cut in, bitter laughter edging his words. "You mean after you drove her away? After you made it clear your career was more important than your family?" His hand instinctively moved toward his badge, touching it as if drawing strength from its authority. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across their faces, highlighting the undeniable resemblance between father and son, the same strong jaw, the same intense blue eyes that Olivia had inherited. How had she never noticed before? How many times had she passed her half-brother in the station's hallways, neither knowing the truth that bound them together? "I was 5 years old," James continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. 5 years old when you let your parents take me away, when you started your new life, your better life, without the burden of your first mistake." He looked at Olivia, guilt mixing with the anger in his eyes. "I watched you grow up from a distance, the cherished daughter, the one he was proud to claim." Chief Thompson's face aged years in moments. "James, you were never a mistake. I was young, scared, and I made choices I've regretted every day since. But taking your anger out on Olivia, that's not justice, that's revenge." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with the weight of unspoken apologies and unresolved pain. Olivia found her voice, small but steady. "Why didn't you just tell me? Tell us." The question seemed to deflate James's anger slightly, replacing it with exhaustion. "Because watching you suffer for a moment felt better than suffering alone for 25 years." He ran a hand over his face, smearing tears he hadn't realized were falling. "I wanted him to feel what it was like to have his child hurt and confused and alone." The confession settled over the scene like autumn leaves, gentle but inexorable. 3 people bound by blood and betrayal, standing amid broken glass and spilled secrets, each realizing that the path forward would require more courage than the years of silence had ever demanded. The truth spilled out in the gathering dusk, as unavoidable as the approaching night. Chief Thompson led both his children to Sarah's memorial bench, a choice that made James flinch visibly. Here, beneath the magnolia tree that had witnessed so many family moments, he finally shared the story he'd carried like a stone in his heart for 25 years. "Catherine Connor was my partner when I first joined the force," he began, his voice heavy with memory. "We were young, idealistic, and foolish enough to think love was all we needed." His hands clasped tightly in his lap, knuckles white with tension. "When she got pregnant with James, we tried to make it work, but I was ambitious, working double shifts, climbing the ranks." Olivia watched her father's face crumple with regret as he continued. "What I didn't know was that Catherine was struggling with depression. The isolation of being a police officer's wife, the long hours alone with a baby, it was destroying her. But I was too blind, too focused on my career to see it. James sat rigidly on the opposite end of the bench, his anger seemingly temporarily suspended by this rare glimpse into his mother's story. "She left because of you," he said, but the accusation carried a note of uncertainty. "No," son Chief Thompson's use of the word made both his children start. "She left because I failed her. Failed both of you. When she disappeared, my parents offered to raise you, claiming it would be better for your stability. I told myself I was doing what was best for you, but really I was running from my own guilt." The chief pulled out his wallet, removing a worn photograph that had clearly been handled many times. It showed a young Catherine Connor in her police uniform, smiling broadly, one hand resting on her pregnant belly. She was the strongest person I knew until she wasn't, and that was my fault. "But why keep it secret?" Olivia asked, her voice small in the growing darkness. "Why not tell me I had a brother?" Chief Thompson's response was interrupted by the arrival of an elderly woman, her silver hair catching the last rays of sunlight. All three turned to look, and James's sharp intake of breath broke the silence. "Mom," he whispered, disbelief etched on his face. Catherine Connor had aged gracefully, but her eyes carried the weight of decades of regret. "I came as soon as I heard what happened," she said, her voice trembling. "I couldn't let history repeat itself." She looked at Chief Thompson, then at Olivia, before finally settling on James. "There's something you need to know, something I should have told you years ago." The tension in the air shifted as Catherine stepped forward, her presence adding another layer to the complex web of family secrets. She carried a stack of unopened letters, each bearing James's name in his father's handwriting, each marked "Return to Sender." "Your father wrote to you every week for 15 years, she said softly. "I was the one who sent them back. I was the one who kept you apart. Not him." The revelation hung in the air like thunder before a storm, threatening to shatter everything James had believed about his past. News of the confrontation in Jefferson Park spread through the police department like wildfire, dividing loyalties and exposing long, simmering tensions. By nightfall, the station buzzed with whispered conversations and pointed glances. Officer Sarah Martinez, who had watched Olivia grow up, stood firmly by Chief Thompson's side, while others rallied behind Connor, seeing him as a victim of the chief's past mistakes. Detective Ryan Brooks, a veteran of 20 years, called an impromptu meeting in the break room. "This isn't just about family drama," he argued to the gathered officers. "This is about integrity, about who we are as a department." His words carried weight, especially among the younger officers who saw the situation as a referendum on leadership and accountability. Meanwhile, City Hall was dealing with its own crisis. Mayor Eleanor Wilson sat in her office, handling a flood of calls from concerned citizens and media outlets. The story had touched a nerve in the community, highlighting the delicate balance between police authority and personal responsibility. "We need to handle this carefully," she warned her staff. "This isn't just about Chief Thompson and Officer Connor anymore. This is about public trust." Outside the station, reporters gathered, their cameras capturing the steady stream of officers entering and leaving the building. The local newspaper had already begun digging into old records, uncovering more connections between the Thompson and Connor families. Each revelation added fuel to the growing controversy. Internal Affairs launched their investigation, led by the stern-faced Captain Diana Chin. Her team methodically collected statements, reviewed body camera footage, and examined personnel files. The investigation threatened to expose not just Connor's actions, but years of departmental politics and hidden allegiances. "There are officers who've been waiting for a chance to challenge Thompson's leadership," Martinez confided to her partner. "They think his community-first approach is too soft, too progressive. They'll use this scandal to push for changes." Her words proved prophetic as a group of senior officers drafted a letter calling for Chief Thompson's temporary suspension pending investigation. The tension spread beyond the department. Local businesses near Jefferson Park reported a drop in customers as families avoided the area that had once been a symbol of community safety. The upcoming Harvest Festival, weeks in planning, faced cancellation as vendors withdrew their participation. At the community center, longtime residents held an emergency meeting. Mrs. Anderson from the flower shop spoke passionately about Chief Thompson's years of service, while others raised concerns about police accountability. The debate grew heated, reflecting deeper divisions within the city. How can we trust them to protect us when they can't even protect their own, one resident demanded. How do we know there aren't more secrets, more covered-up incidents? The questions echoed through the community, forcing everyone to confront uncomfortable truths about power, privilege, and justice. Each person who had witnessed Olivia's ordeal carried their own version of events, colored by their perspectives and prejudices. As night fell over Jefferson City, the park stood empty, its paths unpatrolled for the first time in years. The shattered glass had been cleaned up, but the broken trust it represented would take far longer to repair. In homes across the city, families discussed the incident over dinner tables, each conversation adding to the growing chorus of voices demanding answers, accountability, and change. The community stood at a crossroads, and the path forward would require more than just the truth. It would demand a fundamental reimagining of justice, family, and forgiveness. The police station's conference room felt suffocating as Catherine Connor placed a worn leather journal on the table. Olivia, James, and Chief Thompson sat in tense silence as she opened it, revealing pages filled with faded handwriting and old photographs. Before I show you this, Catherine's hands trembled slightly. You need to understand something about your mother, Olivia. She pulled out a photograph that made both Thompson and James inhale sharply. It showed 3 young police officers in uniform: Michael Thompson, Catherine Connor, and Sarah, Olivia's mother. Sarah wasn't just Michael's second wife, Catherine continued softly. She was my best friend at the academy. The 3 of us were inseparable back then. Her fingers traced the smiling faces in the photograph. She was there the night James was born. She was his godmother. Olivia's world tilted on its axis. But you never told me Mom knew James. She looked at her father accusingly. Chief Thompson's face was ashen, the weight of decades of secrets visibly crushing him. Sarah kept in touch with James after I left, Catherine revealed. She sent him birthday cards, Christmas presents, all through my parents. She made Michael promise to look after him, even though she knew it had to be from a distance. She turned the journal's pages, showing letters, cards, and more photos, evidence of a connection that had been deliberately hidden. James stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. She knew. All those years I saw her at the station, watched her with Olivia. She knew who I was. His voice cracked with fresh pain. Why didn't she ever say anything? Because I made her promise not to, Catherine admitted, tears flowing freely now. I was sick, James. Not just sad or overwhelmed. I had severe postpartum depression that turned into something darker. I convinced myself that Michael and Sarah were conspiring against me, that they wanted to take you away. The paranoia consumed me. Chief Thompson reached for the journal with shaking hands. I never knew about the cards, the presents. Sarah never told me. He looked at his son, understanding dawning in his eyes. She was protecting both of you, protecting you from my guilt and shame, protecting Olivia from a truth I wasn't brave enough to face. More photographs spilled from the journal. James at his high school graduation, with Catherine's parents but Sarah visible in the background. Olivia's 5th birthday party at the park, where James had been working his first patrol shift. Countless moments where their lives had intersected without their knowledge. The day Sarah died, Catherine's voice dropped to a whisper. She was coming to see me. She had convinced me to finally tell the truth, to bring our family together. The accident, she couldn't continue, overcome with emotion. Olivia felt the room spinning. The park incident, James's anger, her father's guilt, everything shifted into a new perspective. Her brother hadn't just been angry at their father, he'd been mourning the loss of 2 mothers, the one who left and the one who had silently watched over him. There's more, Catherine said, pulling out one final photograph. It showed Sarah in the hospital, holding newborn Olivia, with a teenage James standing awkwardly beside her. She made sure you were part of each other's lives, even if you didn't know it. She believed that someday the truth would come out, and when it did, these memories would help heal the wounds. The revelation hung in the air like suspended glass, beautiful and dangerous. Olivia looked at James, her brother, seeing him truly for the first time. The same blue eyes, the same determined set of the jaw, the same inherent sense of justice that had been twisted by years of pain and misunderstanding. Why now? James asked his mother, his voice hoarse. Why tell us all this now? Catherine closed the journal gently. Because when I heard what happened in the park, I realized that Sarah's greatest fear had come true, that our secrets had finally turned to poison, hurting the very people we'd tried to protect. She looked at each of them in turn. It's time for the healing to begin. While the Thompson-Connor family confronted their past in the conference room, a storm was brewing throughout the police department. Captain Richard Maxwell, a veteran officer known for his old-school approach, convened an urgent meeting with several senior officers in the basement archives, far from prying eyes. This could destroy everything we've built, Maxwell argued, spreading incident reports across the table. Thompson's community policing has already made us look weak. If this family scandal gets out, we'll lose what little authority we have left. His supporters nodded grimly, understanding the implied suggestion. Lieutenant Victoria Hayes, however, stood her ground. Are you seriously suggesting we cover this up? An officer assaulted a minor, Richard, badge or no badge, family drama or not, that crosses every line. Her voice carried the weight of 20 years enforcing the law, not just wearing the uniform. The division grew deeper as officers chose sides. Those loyal to Chief Thompson's progressive reforms rallied behind Hayes, while others, frustrated with what they saw as weakening police authority, aligned with Maxwell. The fault lines weren't just professional, they reflected fundamental differences in how each group viewed their role in the community. Meanwhile, Internal Affairs investigator Diana Chin discovered disturbing patterns while reviewing James Connor's personnel file. Multiple complaints of excessive force, all mysteriously dropped, she noted to her team. Someone's been burying these reports for years. The evidence pointed to a systematic effort to protect certain officers, reaching far beyond this single incident. Maxwell's group worked frantically to contain the situation. Delete the body cam footage, he ordered a young officer. Say there was a technical malfunction, but news had already begun leaking out. Officers' phones buzzed with text messages and social media notifications as pieces of the story spread through the department's ranks. Officer Sarah Martinez, torn between loyalty to her friend Sarah's memory and her duty to the department, found herself at a crossroads. She possessed dash cam footage that captured the entire park incident, evidence that would destroy any attempt at a cover-up. Her hand hovered over the send button, knowing her decision would change lives forever. You can't bury this, Hayes confronted Maxwell in the hallway, her voice low but intense. Those kids deserve the truth. The department deserves better than more lies. Maxwell's response was equally quiet but menacing. Sometimes the truth does more damage than a lie, Victoria. You of all people should understand that. The tension reached its peak when anonymous letters appeared in every officer's mailbox detailing years of buried complaints, covered-up incidents, and systematic protection of officers who crossed lines. The letters ended with a simple question: who do we really serve and protect? Department phones rang constantly as media outlets caught wind of the story. Maxwell's group scrambled to craft an official narrative, one that would minimize the damage while maintaining their grip on power. But each attempt at control only revealed more cracks in the foundation. Young officers, inspired by Hayes' stance, began coming forward with their own stories of witnessed misconduct and pressure to stay quiet. The thin blue line that had once seemed impenetrable began to waver, revealing the human cost of years of enforced silence. In the dispatch center, operators fielded calls from concerned citizens demanding answers. The community's trust, carefully built over years of Chief Thompson's leadership, teetered on the brink. Each hour brought new revelations, new questions, and new challenges to the department's integrity. As evening approached, Maxwell made one final attempt to contain the situation, calling an all-hands meeting. But before he could begin his prepared statement, Hayes stood up, holding a USB drive. No more secrets, she announced, her voice carrying across the silent room. No more protecting the wrong people for the wrong reasons. It ends today. The drive contained everything, every buried report, every covered-up complaint, every instance of systemic protection of misconduct. The truth that would either destroy the department or force it to rebuild from the ground up. The story broke on Channel 7 News at 6, with veteran reporter Rachel Stevens standing outside the police station. Sources within the department confirm a disturbing incident involving Chief Thompson's son, Officer James Connor, and the chief's teenage daughter. She reported, her voice steady as camera flashes illuminated the growing crowd behind her. Social media exploded within hours. The hashtag #JeffersonParkTruth began trending locally, then nationally. Cell phone footage from park visitors emerged, showing fragments of the confrontation. Each new video added layers to the story, sparking heated debates about police accountability, family loyalty, and the weight of long-buried secrets. Local newspaper editor Marcus Chen published a detailed expose, revealing the complex web of relationships within the department. This isn't just about one incident, his editorial declared. This is about decades of systematic cover-ups and the cost of silence. The article included interviews with former officers who spoke of an unwritten code protecting certain members of the force. Community leaders struggled to address the public outcry. Reverend James Walker, a longtime advocate for police reform, called for calm while demanding transparency. "We cannot let this divide us," he urged during an emergency town hall meeting. But we also cannot ignore the deeper issues this incident has exposed. Parents gathered outside Jefferson Park, holding candlelight vigils for what they saw as a betrayal of public trust. Mothers shared stories of warning their children about police harassment, while others defended the department's overall record of service. The park, once a symbol of community unity, became ground zero for competing narratives about power, justice, and accountability. Local businesses felt the impact as protests and counter-protests affected foot traffic. The owner of the Park Cafe, Maria Rodriguez, spoke to reporters about witnessing years of interaction between the Thompson family members without realizing their connection. "Sometimes the biggest secrets hide in plain sight," she observed, her words becoming a touchstone for ongoing coverage. Television crews camped outside the station, capturing the steady stream of officers entering and leaving. Each grimace, each avoided comment became fodder for speculation. National news networks picked up the story, framing it within broader debates about police reform and institutional transparency. Former Mayor Thomas Green appeared on multiple news shows defending his role in hiring both Thompson and Connor. "We thought keeping them in separate divisions would prevent exactly this kind of situation," he admitted, inadvertently confirming years of deliberate separation. Online forums buzzed with conspiracy theories and leaked documents. Amateur sleuths combed through years of public records, discovering connections that even department insiders had missed. Photos surfaced at department events showing James Connor standing apart, watching his unknown sister from a distance. The pressure mounted as civil rights organizations demanded independent investigations. This case exemplifies the need for external oversight, declared civil rights attorney Amanda Foster during a press conference. "When family ties and professional duties collide, we need clear protocols and transparency." Local high school students organized a peaceful protest, carrying signs that read "Truth Matters" and "Family shouldn't fight family." Their young faces, some the same age as Olivia, brought home the human cost of institutional silence. As the story evolved, public opinion swayed between sympathy and outrage. Some saw a tragic family drama playing out in public view, while others pointed to deeper systemic issues within law enforcement. The narrative shifted hourly as new details emerged, each revelation forcing the community to confront uncomfortable truths about power, privilege, and the price of keeping secrets. By nightfall, satellite trucks lined the streets around the station, their lights casting long shadows across the building's facade. Inside, officers watched the coverage on breakroom televisions, recognizing that their department would never be the same. The story had moved beyond local news, beyond family drama, to become a national conversation about truth, justice, and the complex bonds that both unite and divide those sworn to protect and serve. Catherine Connor stood in the center of the chief's office, her weathered hands clutching a stack of yellowed envelopes that would change everything. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the blinds, striping the room like prison bars as she faced the family she had fractured decades ago. "I need to tell you the real reason I left," she began, her voice trembling but determined. Chief Thompson sat behind his desk, while James and Olivia occupied the chairs facing him. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. It wasn't just postpartum depression. It wasn't just Michael's ambition. I was running from something much darker. She pulled out a photograph from the bottom of the stack. It showed a young Catherine in her police uniform, standing beside another officer, a man whose face had been carefully cut out of the image. His name was Robert Maxwell, Captain Maxwell's brother. "He was my partner before Michael, and she paused, steadying herself. "He threatened to destroy everything if I didn't leave." The revelation hit James like a physical blow. "Maxwell?" The same Maxwell who's been protecting me all these years. His face paled as connections began forming. He knew all this time. Catherine nodded, tears streaming down her face. Robert had evidence of corruption within the department, evidence that would have destroyed Michael's career before it began. He used it to force me out, to keep his brother's position secure. I couldn't tell anyone, not even your father. Chief Thompson's hands gripped his desk until his knuckles turned white. The Maxwell family has been manipulating this department for decades, he whispered, understanding dawning in his eyes. They didn't just separate our family, they've been using our pain to maintain their control. Olivia, who had been silent until now, reached for one of the envelopes. Inside was a letter dated just weeks after Catherine's disappearance. You tried to warn Dad, she said, scanning the contents. But these never reached him. Because Robert intercepted every letter, Catherine confirmed. He had people watching me, making sure I stayed away. When Sarah discovered the truth years later, she tried to help me come back, to expose everything. The day of her accident. Her voice broke. James stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Are you saying Sarah's accident wasn't an accident? The question hung in the air like smoke, choking them all with its implications. Catherine's silence was answer enough. Chief Thompson's face aged years and moments as the full weight of the conspiracy crashed down around them. His wife's death, his son's estrangement, his daughter's recent trauma, all pieces of a puzzle orchestrated by the Maxwell family's grip on power. I didn't know about the park incident until it was too late, Catherine continued, turning to James. They've been using your anger, son. Captain Maxwell knew exactly what would happen when he assigned you to patrol that area. He wanted this confrontation. James sank back into his chair, the realization of how thoroughly he'd been manipulated washing over him. I played right into their hands, he muttered. All these years, my anger at you, at Dad, it was exactly what they wanted. But why now? Olivia asked, her analytical mind racing ahead. Why let all this come out after keeping it hidden for so long? Catherine pulled out one final document, a pending proposal for departmental reform that would have eliminated many of the old power structures. Because your father was getting too close to changing everything, they needed a scandal big enough to force him out, to discredit his reforms. They used our family's pain as their weapon. Chief Thompson stood slowly, years of tactical training taking over. They didn't count on you coming forward, he said to Catherine. They didn't expect the truth to come out all at once. No, Catherine agreed, straightening her shoulders. They expected us to keep fighting each other. But Sarah always said the truth would set us free. She believed that until the end. The family stood in silence, absorbing the magnitude of the revelation. Their personal drama had been just one act in a larger play of power and corruption, their pain manipulated for others' gain. But in exposing the truth, Catherine had given them something powerful, a common enemy and a chance to heal. What do we do now? Olivia asked, looking between her father and newly discovered brother. Chief Thompson's jaw set in a determined line. We do what Sarah would have wanted. We stand together, we fight back, and we make sure her death wasn't in vain. James moved to stand beside his father, years of anger giving way to resolve. We expose everything, he said firmly, no matter the cost. Catherine watched her family unite, seeing in their faces the strength she'd run from years ago. The truth had indeed set them free, but the real battle was just beginning. Captain Maxwell's face contorted with rage as he watched the surveillance feed from Chief Thompson's office. It's over, he spat into his phone. Catherine's exposed everything. Initiate Protocol Zero. Within minutes, alarms blared through the station as the power cut out, plunging everything into darkness. In the chief's office, James's training kicked in instantly. This is it, he said, moving toward the door. They're making their move. Emergency lights cast an eerie red glow through the corridors as officers scrambled in confusion. Through the chaos, Maxwell and his loyal officers moved with practiced precision, heading straight for the chief's office. There's a safe route through the evidence room, Chief Thompson said, pulling a key from his desk. We need to get these documents to Internal Affairs. He handed the stack of evidence to Olivia, who quickly stuffed them into her backpack. Catherine's revelations about Sarah's death needed to reach the right hands. The sound of boots on stairs echoed through the building. James peered out, catching glimpses of armed figures moving in formation. They're not just trying to stop us, he realized. They're here to eliminate the evidence and the witnesses. Chief Thompson made a split-second decision. "James, take Olivia and Catherine through the back. I'll draw their attention," but before he could move, Olivia grabbed his arm. "No more splitting up," she said firmly. "We do this together." The office door burst open, Maxwell flanked by 4 officers with drawn weapons. How touching, he sneered. The whole family together one last time. His finger tightened on the trigger, but James moved faster, flipping the heavy desk for cover as shots rang out. In the chaos that followed, the Thompsons made their break. Catherine, despite years away from the force, remembered every corner of the old building. They weaved through emergency stairwells and maintenance corridors, Maxwell's team in hot pursuit. "The evidence room has a direct exit to the parking lot," James called out as they ran. "But they'll be expecting that gunfire peppered the walls around them, sending splinters flying." Olivia, her heart pounding, remembered something from countless childhood visits to the station. The old newspaper archive, she gasped between breaths. "It connects to the basement of the library next door." They changed direction, diving through a hidden fire door just as Maxwell's voice echoed through the corridor. "You can't run forever, Thompson. This ends tonight." The archive room was a maze of tall shelves and dusty files. Chief Thompson and James moved with tactical precision, creating diversions while Catherine guided Olivia toward the basement access. But as they reached the hidden door, a shot rang out. James cried out, clutching his shoulder as he fell. Maxwell emerged from the shadows, his gun trained on the fallen officer. Like father, like son, he taunted, always trying to be the hero. But Maxwell had made a crucial mistake. Focused on James, he'd forgotten about Olivia. The 13-year-old girl who'd spent the day facing her fears seized her moment. She swung her heavy backpack full of evidence, catching Maxwell in the back of the knees. The captain stumbled, his shot going wide. Chief Thompson tackled him, their struggle sending both men crashing into a shelf. Decades of archived newspapers rained down, filling the air with dust and confusion. Catherine rushed to James's side while Olivia pulled out her phone, live streaming everything to the department's internal server. "The whole force needs to see this," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. Maxwell, pinned under the chief's weight, laughed maniacally. "You think this changes anything? The system will protect its own. It always has." "Not anymore," came a new voice. Lieutenant Hayes stood in the doorway, backed by a team of officers and internal affairs agents. "We've seen enough." Maxwell's loyal officers, watching the live stream from throughout the building, began lowering their weapons. The truth, finally exposed, broke the spell of loyalty that had protected the corrupt captain for so long. As Hayes read Maxwell his rights, Chief Thompson helped James to his feet. The bullet had only grazed him, but the wound symbolized something deeper: the cost of standing up for truth. "You okay, little sister?" James asked Olivia, managing a small smile despite the pain. Olivia nodded, still filming as Maxwell was led away in handcuffs. "I am now, big brother." Catherine watched her family, whole for the first time in decades, supporting each other in the aftermath of chaos. The archive room, with its scattered papers and broken shelves, looked like their past messy, damaged, but with truth finally brought to light. Outside, dawn was breaking over Jefferson City. The night's events had shattered the old power structure, but from the ruins something new could grow, something built on truth, justice, and the unbreakable bonds of family. "Sarah would be proud," Catherine whispered, touching the locket she always wore. Inside was a picture of all of them, taken so long ago, before secrets and lies had torn them apart. Now finally they had a chance to put things right. The Internal Affairs investigation room buzzed with activity as Captain Diana Chen laid out years of evidence across the conference table. Photographs, incident reports, surveillance footage, and Catherine's letters created a damning timeline of corruption that stretched back decades. "The Maxwell family's influence runs deeper than we imagined," Chen explained to the assembled team of investigators. Lieutenant Hayes stood at her side, still wearing the tactical vest from the archive room confrontation. On multiple screens, footage from Olivia's live stream played on loop, capturing Maxwell's confession and subsequent arrest. "We've identified 37 officers directly involved in the cover-ups," Hayes reported, distributing files to the team. "Another dozen are implicated in Sarah Thompson's accident." The corruption wasn't just about power, it was about maintaining a system of control through fear and family secrets. Outside the investigation room, the department had become a battleground of loyalties. Officers who had served under Maxwell for years struggled to reconcile their trust in him with the evidence of his crimes. Young recruits who had witnessed the chase and arrest became vocal supporters of reform, wearing blue ribbons, Sarah's favorite color, as a symbol of their commitment to change. The hardest part isn't finding the evidence, Chin observed, reviewing witness statements. It's dealing with the officers who still believe Maxwell was protecting department traditions. They see this investigation as a betrayal of the Brotherhood. The division became physical as officers chose sides in the break room, the parking lot, even during patrol assignments. Maxwell's supporters claimed he was being sacrificed for political correctness, while reform advocates argued that true loyalty meant standing up against corruption. Chief Thompson, his arm around James, who was still nursing his shoulder wound, addressed the department. "We're not just investigating crimes," he declared, his voice carrying the weight of personal and professional pain. "We're confronting a culture that turned family against family, officer against officer." Sarah believed in a department that served truth above all. It's time we lived up to that ideal. The investigation uncovered more than just corruption. It revealed a pattern of manipulated assignments, ensuring that officers with knowledge of Maxwell's activities were kept separated. James's placement in the park that day hadn't been random. It was part of a calculated plan to create a scandal that would protect the old guard's power. Catherine provided crucial testimony, her voice steady as she detailed years of threats and surveillance. "They didn't just want to separate our family," she explained to the investigators. "They wanted to use our pain as a weapon to show what happened to officers who challenged the system." Officer Sarah Martinez, reviewing years of patrol logs, discovered something chilling. They scheduled James near Olivia dozens of times, she reported. They were deliberately stoking his resentment, waiting for him to snap. The park incident wasn't just predictable, it was engineered. The investigation expanded beyond the department as FBI agents arrived to examine potential civil rights violations. The city council chambers filled with angry citizens demanding oversight reform. Reporters camped outside the station, broadcasting live updates as more officers came forward with their stories. In the midst of the chaos, Olivia sat with James in the hospital while doctors examined his wound. "I keep thinking about Mom," she said softly. "She saw all of this coming. That's why they had to stop her." James nodded, wincing as the doctor cleaned his graze. "She tried to warn me, left me notes, tried to tell me the truth. But I was too angry to see it. Maxwell used that anger, shaped it into a weapon." The investigation's findings shook the department to its core. Veteran officers who had looked the other way found themselves facing charges. Others, freed from Maxwell's influence, began rebuilding bridges with the community they had sworn to protect. Lieutenant Hayes established a new oversight committee, including civilian members and family representatives. "Transparency isn't just about policies," she insisted during the first meeting. "It's about acknowledging that our strength comes from our connections to the community, not our separation from it." As the sun set on another long day of interviews and evidence review, Captain Chen stood at her office window, watching officers enter and leave the station. Some still walked in groups, separated by their loyalties, but others were beginning to cross those lines, sharing coffee and conversation despite their differences. "This investigation isn't just about punishing the guilty," she told Hayes, who had brought her yet another stack of files. "It's about healing the department, helping officers understand that true loyalty means standing up for what's right, even when it hurts." On her desk, a photo of Sarah Thompson seemed to smile at the progress being made. The truth had cost her life, but her sacrifice was finally bearing fruit. The department would never be the same, and that, perhaps, was her greatest legacy. 2 weeks after the archive room confrontation, Olivia sat in Dr. Rachel Bennett's office, her fingers absently tracing the pattern on a throw pillow. The child psychologist had created a warm, inviting space, but Olivia's eyes kept drifting to the window, watching autumn leaves dance in the wind. "Tell me about your dreams," Dr. Bennett prompted gently. Olivia shifted, drawing her knees to her chest. "I keep seeing the park," she admitted quietly. "But it's different now. In my dreams, I see James not as the angry officer, but as a little boy. He's alone, watching Dad with me from a distance. Sometimes I wake up crying, not for myself, but for him." The healing process had been complicated by the media attention. Every news outlet wanted interviews, wanting to hear about the brave 13-year-old who helped expose departmental corruption. But the real work happened here in quiet moments of reflection and understanding. "And how do you feel about James now?" Dr. Bennett asked, noting how Olivia's shoulders tensed slightly at the question. "It's confusing," Olivia replied, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes I look at him and still feel afraid, remembering the beer bottle, his anger. But then I'll catch him looking at old family photos or trying so hard to make things right, and I see the brother he's trying to be." The sessions weren't just about processing trauma, they were about understanding the complex web of family dynamics that had led to that moment in the park. Dr. Bennett worked with both siblings separately and together, helping them navigate their new relationship. James attended his own therapy sessions with Dr. Marcus Chen, a specialist in law enforcement trauma. "I carried my anger like a shield," he confessed during one session. "It was easier to hate them than to face the pain of being abandoned. But watching Olivia livestream everything, seeing her courage, it made me realize I'd become what I hated most, someone who abused power to hurt others." The breakthrough came during a joint session when Olivia brought Sarah's old journal. "Mom wrote about you," she told James, her voice trembling slightly. "She never stopped believing we'd be a family someday." Reading Sarah's words together, both siblings found common ground in their shared loss and their mother's unwavering hope. Chief Thompson also sought help, working with a family counselor to address years of guilt and unresolved grief. "I failed both my children," he acknowledged during a session. "I thought I was protecting them by keeping secrets, but I was really protecting myself from facing my mistakes." Catherine's presence added another layer to the healing process. She attended family sessions, helping piece together the full story of their fractured past. Her insights helped James understand the depth of Maxwell's manipulation, while giving Olivia a fuller picture of the mother she'd never known. The park itself underwent its own kind of therapy. Community members organized cleanup days, replanting gardens and repainting benches. The spot where the confrontation had occurred was transformed into a meditation garden, with a plaque dedicated to Sarah's memory. Slowly, tentatively, the family began creating new memories to replace the painful ones. Sunday dinners became a tradition, with Catherine teaching Olivia her secret recipe for apple pie, while James and their father talked about departmental reforms. These quiet moments of normalcy did more for their healing than any therapy session could. Dr. Bennett watched the family's progress with cautious optimism. "Healing isn't linear," she reminded them during a group session. "There will be good days and bad days. The important thing is that you're facing them together now." Olivia captured this sentiment in her journal. "Maybe that's what family really means, not perfect people, but people who keep trying, keep forgiving, keep loving, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." The Thompson family gathered in Sarah's memorial garden on a crisp Sunday afternoon, the first time all four of them had been there together since the incident. Chief Thompson had suggested the location, believing that Sarah's presence might help bridge the remaining gaps between them. "She always loved autumn," Catherine remarked softly, watching leaves spiral down around Sarah's memorial bench. James stood slightly apart, his hands in his pockets, still unsure of his place in this fragile new family dynamic. Olivia, sensing his discomfort, did something unexpected. She patted the space beside her on the bench. "Mom's journal mentioned how you used to help her tend these roses," she said to James, her voice gentle but firm. "Maybe you could teach me." The simple invitation carried weight beyond the words themselves. It was an offering of trust, a small step toward healing. Chief Thompson watched his children, tears gathering in his eyes. "Sarah would have loved this," he managed, his voice thick with emotion. "She always said our family was like her garden, needed patience, care, and sometimes a little pruning to grow strong." The family began meeting regularly, each gathering carefully planned to build trust. They started with short visits, shared meals where conversation stayed light and safe. Catherine brought old photos, filling in the gaps of James's childhood for Olivia, while James shared stories of Sarah's secret kindnesses, the anonymous birthday gifts, the encouraging notes she'd somehow managed to send through the years. "I used to hate these family meetings," James admitted during one dinner, pushing pasta around his plate. "But now, they're helping me understand things I never could before." Olivia reached across the table, squeezing his hand, a gesture that would have been unthinkable weeks earlier. The breakthrough came during a rainy Saturday when they found themselves trapped indoors. Olivia suggested they go through Sarah's old boxes, stored in the attic for years. Among photo albums and memorabilia, they discovered a video camera with footage from James's high school graduation. Sarah had filmed from a distance, her whispered commentary full of pride and longing. "She never stopped being your mother too," Chief Thompson told James, watching his son's hand shake as he held the camera. "She carried the weight of our secrets, but she never stopped loving you." Catherine's role in the reconciliation was crucial. She organized family therapy sessions, insisted on honest conversations about the past, and helped both children understand the complex circumstances that had torn their family apart. Her strength in facing her own mistakes encouraged others to do the same. The healing wasn't always smooth. There were triggered moments, angry outbursts, days when old wounds seemed too deep to bridge. During one particularly difficult evening, James stormed out of dinner after a heated discussion about the past. But instead of letting him go, Olivia followed him to the porch. "I'm still scared sometimes," she admitted, sitting beside him. "But I'm more scared of losing my brother again." Her honesty broke through his defenses, leading to their first real conversation as siblings. Chief Thompson and Catherine also worked to rebuild their relationship, not as former lovers but as parents united in healing their children's wounds. Their shared guilt and regret gradually transformed into a commitment to do better, to be better for the sake of their family. Small traditions began to form: Sunday dinners, monthly visits to Sarah's garden, family game nights where laughter slowly replaced tension. Each gathering added another layer of trust, another strand in the web of connection they were carefully weaving. As autumn deepened into winter, the Thompson family found themselves growing stronger, their bonds tested but unbroken. Sarah's presence seemed to guide them, her love echoing in every small step toward reconciliation. Jefferson City rallied around the Thompson family in unexpected ways. What began as a local police scandal evolved into a community-wide movement for healing and reform. The transformation started with Maria Rodriguez, owner of the Park Cafe, who organized a Healing Through Understanding forum at her establishment. "This isn't just about one family or one department," Maria announced to the Park Cafe. "It's about breaking cycles of silence that hurt us all." Community members shared their own stories of family secrets, broken trust, and the difficult path to reconciliation. The Thompson family's story had opened a floodgate of suppressed pain and hope for healing. Reverend Walker turned his church basement into a weekly support group for law enforcement families. Officers' children, including Olivia and James, found a safe space to discuss the unique pressures they faced. "Our parents protect the community," Olivia shared during one session, "but sometimes they need protection too, from their own silence, their own pain." Lieutenant Hayes implemented a groundbreaking family first policy within the department. Officers received additional mental health support, and family counseling became part of standard benefits. The program, named in Sarah's honor, emphasized the importance of addressing personal trauma to prevent it from affecting professional conduct. Local schools incorporated elements of the Thompson story into their conflict resolution programs. Students learned about the courage it takes to speak truth, the importance of forgiveness, and the possibility of change. Olivia was invited to speak at assemblies, her young voice carrying the weight of hard-won wisdom. "My brother's actions came from years of hidden pain," she explained to her peers. "Understanding that didn't excuse what he did, but it helped us find a path forward." Her words resonated with students dealing with their own family struggles. The park itself became a symbol of community transformation. Volunteers gathered every weekend to help with restoration projects. The meditation garden expanded, featuring plaques with quotes about healing and reconciliation. Sarah's rose garden, long neglected, bloomed again under the care of both James and Catherine. Chief Thompson worked with City Council to establish the Open Badge Initiative, promoting transparency in law enforcement. Regular community forums allowed citizens to voice concerns directly to department leadership. Officers attended cultural sensitivity training and family dynamics workshops, learning to recognize signs of personal stress before they led to professional misconduct. James, once he recovered, became an advocate for police reform from within. He shared his story at police academies across the state, warning future officers about the dangers of unresolved trauma and the importance of mental health support. His honesty about his own failures earned him respect from both veteran officers and new recruits. Local businesses showed support in practical ways. The hardware store donated materials for park renovations. Restaurants offered free meals to officers attending family counseling sessions. The local newspaper's editorial board committed to balanced coverage of police issues, highlighting both challenges and progress. Community artists painted a mural on the station wall, depicting scenes of healing and unity. Central to the image was a family tree with intertwined roots, symbolizing how personal healing contributes to community strength. The Thompson family story became part of the city's larger narrative of transformation and hope. Monthly community unity picnics began in the park, bringing together law enforcement families and local residents. These gatherings helped break down barriers, allowing people to see beyond badges and uniforms to the human stories beneath. As winter approached, the city organized a festival of light in the park, with thousands of candles illuminating the paths where darkness had once prevailed. The Thompson family walked together, each carrying a light, their personal journey of healing lighting the way for others to follow. The community's support proved that true change requires collective effort, that healing one family can help heal a city, and that even the deepest wounds can become sources of strength when faced together. 6 months after the park incident, Jefferson City Police Department underwent a radical transformation. Chief Thompson, with James and Lieutenant Hayes by his side, introduced the Transparent Shield Initiative, a comprehensive reform package that would reshape law enforcement culture from the ground up. The first major change came in recruitment and training. Every potential officer now underwent extensive psychological evaluation, with particular attention to family trauma and unresolved personal conflicts. The academy curriculum expanded to include modules on emotional intelligence, family dynamics, and the impact of intergenerational trauma on law enforcement. "We're not just training officers," Chief Thompson explained during a press conference. "We're nurturing guardians who understand that their own healing is crucial to protecting others." The department partnered with local universities to develop a groundbreaking mental health support program, mandatory for all officers and their families. Lieutenant Hayes spearheaded the Family Connection Protocol, ensuring that personal relationships within the department were openly acknowledged and properly managed. No longer would family members be silently separated or their connections hidden. Instead, clear guidelines were established for handling potential conflicts of interest. The evidence room incident led to a complete overhaul of internal investigation procedures. Captain Chen established an independent oversight committee, including civilian members, mental health professionals, and family representatives. Every complaint was now tracked through a transparent digital system, accessible to both department leadership and community watchdogs. Sarah's Law, named in honor of Olivia's mother, mandated regular psychological evaluations for officers involved in high-stress situations. The legislation, championed by both Thompson and Connor, recognized that personal trauma could compromise professional judgment if left unaddressed. Body cameras became mandatory, but with a unique twist: officers received training in using them as tools for self-reflection and improvement, not just accountability. Weekly review sessions helped identify signs of stress or conflict before they escalated into misconduct. The department's physical space transformed as well. The stark corridors softened with artwork created by officers' children, including pieces by Olivia that depicted healing and hope. The break room became a reflection space, where officers could process difficult experiences with trained counselors. Perhaps most significantly, the department established the Bridge program, allowing officers to temporarily step back from active duty to address personal issues without stigma. James became its first participant, using his experience to help design support systems for others struggling with family-related trauma. "Real strength isn't in hiding our wounds," he told a group of recruits. "It's in acknowledging them, healing them, and using that healing to protect others more effectively." These reforms spread beyond Jefferson City as other departments began adopting similar programs. The Transparent Shield model became a case study in police academies nationwide, proving that addressing personal trauma could lead to more effective community protection. Chief Thompson often paused at Sarah's memorial when entering the station, remembering how her death had ultimately led to these vital changes. The department's transformation honored her belief that truth, however painful, was the foundation of true justice and protection. The reforms weren't just policies on paper, they represented a fundamental shift in how law enforcement viewed itself, not as an impenetrable force, but as a human institution capable of both vulnerability and growth. At 14, Olivia Thompson became the youngest member of the Police Youth Advisory Board, but her influence extended far beyond her age. Her experiences transformed her from a victim of circumstance into a powerful advocate for change, using her story to bridge gaps between law enforcement and young people. We need to talk about the hard things she told a packed auditorium of high school students. About family secrets, about power, about the courage to speak up when something's wrong. Her presentations always began with her own story, but quickly evolved into interactive discussions about trust, authority, and the importance of breaking silence. Working alongside Dr. Bennett, Olivia developed the Safe Space program for children of law enforcement officers. The program provided peer support groups where kids could discuss the unique pressures they faced. "We're not just our parents" badges became their unofficial motto, emphasizing the importance of individual identity and emotional honesty. Her blog, Behind the Badge: A Daughter's Journey, gained national attention. Through thoughtful posts about family healing, forgiveness, and reform, Olivia gave voice to a generation of young people affected by law enforcement trauma. Her words reached thousands, including other officers' children struggling with similar challenges. Together with James, she created sibling circle support groups for families divided by professional roles and personal secrets. The program helped other law enforcement families confront hidden tensions and begin their own healing journeys. Their story of reconciliation became a powerful testament to the possibility of change. Local schools invited Olivia to help develop conflict resolution programs. She worked with teachers to create age-appropriate discussions about authority, trust, and the importance of speaking up against wrongdoing. Her perspective as both a victim and an advocate brought unique insight to these sensitive conversations. Change doesn't just happen in police stations or city halls, she explained during a youth leadership conference. It happens in playgrounds, in cafeterias, in everyday moments when we choose truth over silence, understanding over anger. The Olivia Thompson Scholarship was established by the department, supporting children of law enforcement officers pursuing studies in psychology, social work, or criminal justice reform. The scholarship emphasized the importance of addressing personal trauma while working towards systemic change. Her advocacy caught the attention of national police reform organizations. At conferences and workshops, Olivia shared the stage with veteran officers and policymakers, her young voice adding crucial perspective to discussions about departmental transformation. The park where everything began became her favorite spot for small group discussions. Under the same trees where fear had once flourished, she now led conversations about hope and healing. Sarah's Memorial Garden provided a peaceful backdrop for difficult but necessary dialogues. "My mother believed in the power of truth," Olivia often said, touching the locket containing Sarah's picture. She knew that real change starts with honest conversations, even when those conversations hurt. Her work earned recognition from youth advocacy groups nationwide, but Olivia remained focused on personal connections rather than accolades. Each transformed life, each healed relationship meant more to her than any award. Through her advocacy, Olivia honored both her parents' legacy, her father's commitment to justice, and her mother's dedication to truth while forging her own path toward creating positive change. James Connor's path to redemption began in the same park where his anger had nearly destroyed his family. Every morning before sunrise, he tended Sarah's rose garden, each careful act of nurturing helping to heal his own wounded spirit. The community watched his transformation with a mixture of skepticism and hope. "The hardest part isn't facing others' judgment," he shared during a department therapy session. "It's facing myself in the mirror each morning, acknowledging the pain I caused while choosing to become something better." His honesty about his struggles resonated with other officers battling their own demons. Through the Bridge program he helped establish, James worked with officers showing signs of stress or trauma. His personal story became a powerful warning about the dangers of unresolved pain and the importance of emotional healing. "Our badges don't make us invulnerable," he reminded them. "Sometimes they make us more fragile." He took special interest in mentoring officers from broken families, helping them process their personal histories before they affected their professional conduct. The Connor Protocol became department standard, requiring regular check-ins for officers dealing with family-related stress. His relationship with Olivia grew stronger through their shared advocacy work. Together, they developed workshops for law enforcement families, using their own journey from trauma to healing as a template for others. Their sibling bond, once poisoned by secrets, became a source of strength and inspiration. James sought formal education in psychology, attending evening classes while maintaining his modified duties. His research on intergenerational trauma in law enforcement families contributed to new training protocols across the state. But understanding why I became who I was, he explained, helps me guide others away from that path. The beer bottle incident, rather than defining him, became a turning point in his story. During training sessions, he openly discussed his actions, using his shame as a tool for teaching about accountability and transformation. His vulnerability encouraged other officers to confront their own potential for misconduct. He established a support group specifically for children of officers, creating a safe space for them to express fears and frustrations without judgment. "I was that angry kid once," he told them. "Your pain is valid, but it doesn't have to define your future." Working with Catherine, he documented their family's journey in a series of training videos for police academies. Their honest discussions about abandonment, resentment, and reconciliation helped humanize the complex emotional challenges facing law enforcement families. Chief Thompson watched his son's transformation with pride, seeing in James's dedication to change echoes of Sarah's unwavering belief in the power of truth. Their relationship, once fractured by secrets, grew stronger through shared commitment to reforming the department. Perhaps most powerfully, James became an advocate for preventive mental health care in law enforcement. "We don't have to wait for a crisis," he insisted during department meetings. "We can address the pain before it becomes poison." His redemption wasn't marked by any single moment, but by consistent, daily choices to face his past while building a better future. Through his transformation, James Connor became living proof that even the deepest wounds could heal, and that those who had caused harm could become agents of healing for others. The courthouse fell silent as Judge Rebecca Martinez delivered her unexpected ruling in the Maxwell case. Instead of the harsh sentence everyone anticipated, she proposed an unprecedented alternative. Maxwell would serve a reduced sentence in exchange for participating in a groundbreaking restorative justice program, working alongside the Thompson family to reform police departments nationwide. "The easy path would be pure punishment," Judge Martinez stated, her voice firm. "But true justice requires more than retribution. It demands transformation." The decision sent shockwaves through the legal community and divided public opinion. Olivia, sitting between James and her father, gripped their hands as the judge continued. "Robert Maxwell will serve 5 years under supervised release, during which he must actively participate in the Thompson Family Reconciliation Initiative, sharing his insight into how power structures corrupt and how they can be dismantled." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Maxwell, who had expected decades behind bars, looked stunned. Chief Thompson stood, addressing the court with measured words. "Your Honor, our family's journey has taught us that healing comes in unexpected ways. We accept this challenge." James, who had once been Maxwell's unwitting pawn, found himself facing a new test of forgiveness. "The man manipulated my entire life," he whispered to Olivia. "But maybe that's exactly why his voice needs to be part of this change." Catherine's testimony had been instrumental in shaping the judge's decision. She had spoken of cycles of abuse, of how punishment alone never addressed the root causes of corruption. "We need to understand how good people become corrupt," she had argued, "to prevent it from happening again." The media dubbed it the Thompson Doctrine, a radical approach to justice that emphasized rehabilitation over punishment, understanding over vengeance. Critics called it soft, supporters hailed it as revolutionary. As Maxwell was led away to begin processing, he paused near the Thompson family. "I spent decades building walls," he said quietly. "I never expected to help tear them down." His words carried the weight of a man confronting a future he never imagined. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered around Olivia, asking how she felt about this twist. With wisdom beyond her years, she replied, "Sometimes the bravest thing isn't fighting your enemies, it's giving them a chance to change." The decision would set a precedent for handling police corruption cases nationwide. The Thompson family's willingness to work with their former adversary would become a model for restorative justice in law enforcement. As autumn leaves swirled around them, The family left the courthouse together, stepping into an uncertain but hopeful future. Their story had opened another unexpected chapter, proving that justice, like healing, sometimes takes surprising forms. 1 year after the court's decision, James Conner stood before a national conference of police chiefs, his story of transformation holding the audience spellbound. Beside him sat Robert Maxwell, their unlikely partnership becoming a powerful symbol of the department's revolutionary approach to reform. "I was the perfect weapon," James admitted to the hushed auditorium. "My pain, my anger, my sense of abandonment, Maxwell's system used it all. But now we're using that same understanding to prevent others from falling into similar traps." The irony of their collaboration wasn't lost on anyone, yet it proved remarkably effective. Together they developed the Breaking Cycles program, which identified officers at risk of abuse of power due to personal trauma. Their insights, coming from opposite sides of the corruption spectrum, provided a unique perspective on how departmental culture could either heal or weaponize personal pain. James's work with troubled officers expanded beyond Jefferson City. Police departments nationwide began adopting his peer support model, which emphasized early intervention and family healing. His own journey from aggressor to healer gave hope to others struggling with similar demons. The program he created with Olivia became particularly influential. Siblings in service helped law enforcement families address hidden tensions before they erupted into crisis. Their story of reconciliation provided a roadmap for others navigating complicated family dynamics within police departments. Maxwell's presence in these programs, though initially controversial, proved invaluable. His insider knowledge of how power structures exploit personal vulnerability helped identify and address systemic issues. Together, they transformed police training nationwide, embedding emotional intelligence and family awareness into standard procedures. James's rehabilitation work earned recognition from unexpected quarters. Civil rights organizations, once his harshest critics, now praised his commitment to genuine reform. His transparency about his own failures made his message of change more credible. The beer bottle incident, rather than remaining a source of shame, became a powerful teaching tool. James used it to demonstrate how unresolved trauma can explode in moments of crisis and how understanding these triggers is crucial for prevention. In therapy sessions with other officers, James often shared how his relationship with Olivia had evolved from his darkest moment to his greatest source of strength. Their sibling bond, tested by tragedy but strengthened through healing, inspired others to believe in the possibility of genuine change. Working alongside Maxwell, James helped dismantle the very systems that had once exploited his pain. Their unlikely alliance proved that redemption was possible even in the most challenging circumstances, and that true change often comes from unexpected sources. On the 5th anniversary of the Park incident, the Thompson family gathered at Sarah's Memorial Garden for a special dedication ceremony. The space had been transformed into the Sarah Thompson Center for Police Family Healing, a living testament to one family's journey from tragedy to transformation. Olivia, now 18 and preparing for college, stood at the podium beside her brother. 5 years ago, this park held our darkest moment, she began, her voice steady. Today, it stands as proof that healing is possible, that broken families can become whole again. James squeezed her shoulder, their sibling bond now a source of strength rather than pain. Catherine and Chief Thompson sat in the front row alongside Robert Maxwell, whose presence symbolized the unexpected turns their journey had taken. The garden bloomed with Sarah's favorite roses, tended by both James and Catherine as part of their own healing ritual. "Our mother believed in the power of truth," Olivia continued, touching the locket she still wore. She knew that secrets could poison a family, but she also believed in second chances. Her eyes met Maxwell's, acknowledging how even their greatest adversary had become part of their healing story. The ceremony included the unveiling of a new sculpture, a broken badge being transformed into a flowering tree, symbolizing how pain could give birth to growth. The artist had incorporated actual pieces of James's old badge, melted and reforged into something beautiful. As twilight approached, families gathered for what had become a tradition, sharing stories of healing and hope. Officers and their children, inspired by the Thompson story, spoke openly about their own journeys toward reconciliation. The park, once a site of trauma, had become a sanctuary for honest conversations and genuine change. Chief Thompson wrapped his arm around James as they watched Olivia lead a group of young people in a candlelight vigil. Your mother would be proud, he said softly. Of all of us. The night ended with a simple but powerful gesture. Each person present placed a rose at Sarah's memorial, including Maxwell, whose hands shook slightly as he laid his flower among the others. The message was clear: healing isn't just personal, it ripples outward, touching lives in unexpected ways. As stars appeared above Jefferson Park, the Thompson family stood together, their story still unfolding but their foundation stronger than ever. They had learned that true reconciliation doesn't mean forgetting the past, but rather building something new from its lessons. The park lights illuminated their faces: father, daughter, son, mother, each bearing traces of past pain, but also the unmistakable glow of hope. Their journey had become more than just a family's healing, it had become a beacon for others seeking their own path to reconciliation. Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey of healing and redemption. If this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing to our channel to support our team in bringing more meaningful narratives to life. Your subscription helps us continue creating content that matters. Share this video with friends and family who might find hope in the Thompson family's story. Don't forget to like the video and leave a comment below sharing your thoughts and emotions. Did this story resonate with you? How has it impacted your perspective on family, forgiveness, and healing? Would you like to hear part 2 of the Thompson family's journey? Let us know in the comments below. Together we can build a community that believes in the power of transformation and second chances. Remember, every subscription makes a difference. Thank you for being part of our storytelling family.